Good morning, Keith, and I am ready.
Good morning, Rick. Okay, so here we go. The title of this one is what's relatively important and what's absolutely important. There's a difference.
Hmm.
And I had to learn this, man, because I was so identified with what's happening right now, this immediate event, that I couldn't see. What does they say? You can't see the forest for the trees.
Hmm.
That I couldn't see the bigger picture. I just couldn't. And an analogy would be like this. Sometimes when I'm driving, not now because I've really taken this kind of perspective, that absolute seeing everything in an absolute way or living that way as opposed to what I think is relatively important. I've applied that to other aspects of my life. One being of driving. So when I'm driving, and you have all this traffic coming, and let's say you're making a left turn, and oncoming traffic is coming, and it looks pretty dense. And then you see this small little window that you can quickly make a left turn to get by. But if you pause just for a second, after that pause is a long stretch of no cars coming your way.
Yeah, that's
And,
great.
and I've seen myself do it over and over. Like all I had to do was wait a second, and then that would have passed, and I would have been able. There would have been a clearing that I could have seen more. The same thing happens with storms, both storms that actually happen, the physical storms, and then the storms and changing of seasons in which things might not be pleasant. If I just wait for a second, it'll change. And so I think of that with how much emphasis and importance that I can place on things that are only relatively important. So when I was thinking about my time at Mayo Clinic, right? And when I was, in a very thoughtful way, they let me go during the pandemic from employment as a contract employee. And because of the practice, I was able to see that me being let go of that, at Mayo Clinic, and not knowing how I was going to pay, my living expenses was only a relatively important event. What was absolutely important was who was I being as I had this experience? Was I keeping an open heart? Was I practicing acceptance? Was I still going to carry on an attitude of being kind, of being my best, being of service through that event? And so everything that comes up for me is relatively important. What's absolutely important is me deepening my consciousness, leading with an open heart, cultivating inner peace and love. So that's what it means for me, Rick. That's the difference. These little events are an opportunity for me to practice really deepening these other things that I talked about of being loving, being kind, being a person who leads and lives with an open heart, and cultivating inner peace.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's beautiful. I wish we had a transcript of that so I could memorize it. That's beautiful. I think the problem that I have is that it's difficult when the pace of life is such that you don't have time to really prioritize. I mean, how do you go about deciding what's relative and what's absolute? And I guess what I try to do is I try to put myself in the driver's seat. By that, I mean, I try to just be mindful of whatever I'm experiencing, I'm judging. And as I'm judging what comes in, one of the things I need to decide is how much psychic, emotional energy am I going to put on this? Now, if your wife is going to leave you, that's one kind of problem. If the soup is cold in a restaurant, that's another. Everybody knows that. What's harder to see is that when you have things that could be potentially difficult, that could be potentially disastrous, like you said, losing your job and not knowing how to pay the bills, then it's a little more difficult to understand whether that's relative or whether that's something that's absolute. You were able to put that in the non-absolute category right away. I'm not sure many people would. And to your credit, you were able to do that. I guess the first thing would be just to decide, as you are viewing what is troubling you, to decide whether things, how much you're going to react to them and how much consideration you're going to give. And the ultimate test always is, this has as much meaning as I give it. This has
Mhm.
as much meaning as I give it. And the idea that you can give meaning to something and not be just overwhelmed by it is sort of a foreign idea for a lot of people. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is the idea that we're always able to control, if we choose to control, what happens. But often we're in a reactive state, which is all about ego, and it's all about self-protection, and it's nothing about inner peace or harmony or trying to truly understand what your personal truth is and what value things have when they occur to you. So I guess monitoring and just being mindful of the fact that you have the power to give it whatever power it has, to accept it or to reject it or to work with it or not, all of those considerations are your personal choices. We all have those choices. And I guess I'm arguing against simply reacting and being angry and wanting things to be different all the time. That just does not work.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for all of that. It doesn't work. I mean, it's one of those things, Michael Singer says, that kind of behavior of being angry or withdrawn or non-acceptance, all those things, they are, when you do a cost analysis, they're 100% costs and zero benefit.
Yeah, there you go.
No business person would ever do a deal like that, but we do a deal like that every day when we get upset about the weather. We get upset about staffing issues at work, like all the things that we carry on about that absolutely have 100% cost and no benefit, and it doesn't change a thing. And so that's how I got to this point, how I got here. Like you gave me credit for, like, man, Keith, you got here with some pretty, what most people would find challenging.
Yeah.
Is because I knew the alternative. The alternative was to not get here and suffer. And I don't want to suffer. So I learned to move to acceptance very quickly. And we talked about this before. Most people will think that accepting means not doing anything. No, you do something if there's something to be done, but you do it peacefully. So it is this idea that this event is already one problem. And you know what's worse than one problem? Two problems. So why would I want to compound that problem with me being a mess inside about it? I don't. Like, I need to be at my I need to be at my best to deal with this, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's a health diagnosis, whether it's losing your job, or something very trivial like you get to the hotel and they don't have a reservation for you. Whatever the case may be, all those are one problem. But you can make it a lot worse by resisting it and being upset inside. And then you got two problems on your hands, and you are not equipped to deal effectively and, most importantly, peacefully with the first problem. Like, I want you nowhere near this first problem, like, at all. We gave this example before. A medical provider, like, if they, I don't want them working on me if because there'll be problem number two if they're a mess inside, right? You have people that are advocating for these really big challenges that we have, in our society. You know who I want working on that? A peaceful person. I want a peaceful person working on these problems we have, because everybody else is just going to make it worse. And so that's this whole notion of, is your inner being, who you are being as you go through these ebbs and flows of life. Who you're being is what is of in my opinion, is what is of absolute importance. Like, so your kid comes home and there's some trouble that they've gotten into or something they're dealing with, or you're upset about whatever it is, them not living up to your expectations. That, if that's a problem at all, it's a relatively important problem. What's most important is who you are being as you're taking this kid through this journey of maturing and growing. How are you showing up for them? That's what's of absolute importance. Focus on that, and the kid has a fighting chance of coming out on the other side of this, whole. So my whole thing, Rick, is getting this distinction down has been a game changer for me.
Mm.
And when I feel myself being drawn in by my mind that this is a big problem, I'm like, if my mind is telling me this, I'm not listening, because it is notorious for giving horrible advice, horrible advice. Now, when I give it a job to do that's informed by my conscious self, that's rooted in working toward a peaceful resolution, oh, then my mind does what I'm telling it to do. It listens to me, not the other way around. And then we can make some progress here that is a win-win. So I'll let you close this out, my friend.
I think you just closed us out. I'm a big advocate for the idea of the absolute being that inner personal gyroscope that we have. That's the thinker behind the thought. That's the person, that's the entity, that's the life force that is really who you are, and not your mind's machinations and all of the horrible things you can imagine that will happen to you if you don't act like a jerk. So the inner gyroscope to me is the absolute. Everything else, and I mean everything, is just circumstance. And then the choice is, how much are you going to allow it to affect your life? And if you're peaceful about it and you have an inner gyroscope, you can handle anything, whatever comes in whatever amount, in a way that makes sense for you. And we're all struggling with how to do that well, especially now, I think, with what's happening with COVID and all the political antagonism that there is in our country and in the world. So I I want another transcript of this too, Keith. I was hanging on every word when you were talking about that the absolute versus the relative for you. That really was instructive. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rick. I love you.
I love you. We'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time.